When my son left home that morning, I had no idea it would be the last time I saw him as my own. He didn't look back when he closed the door. He didn't say goodbye, didn't even say take care. He just left, and all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat in the quiet room. I remember standing there, holding the corner of the kitchen table, trying to understand what had just happened. He had told me a few days before that he wanted to start a new life with his wife. I was happy for him. I really was. I wanted him to build his home, his family, his dreams. But I never thought that starting a new life meant leaving me behind completely. It still feels like yesterday. The house was warm that morning. I had made breakfast for him, his favorite, simple bread with butter and tea. He barely touched it. His eyes were restless, like someone hiding a secret. I asked him if something was wrong, and he just smiled faintly and said, "Nothing, Ma. Just thinking about work." I knew my son. He was quiet when he was guilty, and that morning, he was quieter than ever. I didn't know that he had already made his decision. He had already emptied the small savings account I had worked so many years to build. All those late nights, all those meals skipped, all those days of working extra hours just to put something aside for him, gone, without a word. It wasn't about the money. It was about the trust. A mother's trust in her child is sacred. You give everything because you believe your child would never turn that love into pain. But life has its own ways of teaching us lessons we never asked for. When I found out later that day, I couldn't even cry. My hands trembled as I held the bank statement. I read the numbers over and over, thinking there must be a mistake. I remember calling the bank and asking if there had been some kind of system error. The woman on the other side spoke gently. "No, ma'am. It was withdrawn by an authorized user. A young man, your son, right?" I didn't answer her. I just hung up the phone and sat there, staring at the window. Outside, the sky was gray, the kind of gray that feels like it's carrying your own sadness. But maybe I should start from the beginning. My name doesn't matter much because this story could belong to any mother. A mother who worked, loved, and gave everything for her only child. My husband passed away when my son was just 7 years old. It was sudden, a heart attack. I was 32 then, with no job, no savings, and a child who depended on me for everything. Those years were hard, but they were also full of love. My son, Ollie, was the reason I kept going. I used to say he was born with gentle eyes. He never asked for much, never complained, always understood when I couldn't buy something. He would help me around the house, bring me flowers from the street, and say, "One day, Ma, I'll take care of you." I held on to those words through every tough night. I worked as a school helper for years, cleaning classrooms, arranging chairs, carrying books for teachers. Every coin I earned, I saved a part of it. It wasn't much, but it gave me a sense of safety. I told myself that when Ollie grew up, he would never have to worry like I did. When he got older, he was smart and kind. People liked him. He got a small job at a local electronics shop and worked hard. I was proud of him every single day. We didn't have much, but our home was full of peace. We would have tea together every evening and talk about our day. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, and even that silence felt like comfort. Then one day, he met her, Aisha. She was beautiful, bright, and polite. The first time he told me about her, his eyes lit up. I could see he was truly in love. He said she understood him, cared for him, and made him feel seen. I smiled, though deep inside, a small fear whispered to me, "Don't lose your place in his heart." When he brought her home to meet me, I greeted her warmly. She called me Amy with such sweetness that I felt my fears fade away. She was respectful, humble, and soft-spoken. I thought maybe I had been wrong to worry. After a few months, they got married. I used most of my savings to help them with the wedding. It wasn't grand, but it was beautiful. I remember standing near the stage, watching my son in his wedding suit, his face glowing with happiness. That moment filled my heart. I thought, all those years of sacrifice were worth this. They moved in with me after the wedding, and for the first few months, everything seemed fine. The house was full of laughter again. Aisha would help me cook, Ollie would bring small gifts for us both. We had family dinners, watched TV together, shared stories. I thought maybe God was finally giving me peace after so many hard years. But slowly, things started changing, not loudly, just quietly. It began with small comments. Aisha would say things like, "Ollie, your mother is very independent. She doesn't need help with bills, right? Or maybe we should move closer to my mother, she's getting older too." I didn't take them seriously at first. She was young, maybe she didn't realize how her words could sting. Then Ollie started spending more time at his in-laws' house. He would say he was helping them with small errands or fixing something. I didn't mind, family should help each other. But soon, he began staying there overnight, saying things like, "It's late, Ma. I'll come tomorrow." I tried not to complain. I told myself he was just adjusting, that he'd find his balance again. I didn't want to be the kind of mother who holds her child too tightly. But inside, I could feel the distance growing, not just physical but emotional. One evening, when he came home, I asked softly, "Ollie, do you still feel happy here?" He looked surprised. "Of course, Ma. Why would you ask that?" I smiled and said, "Because lately, I only see you when you need something." He didn't answer. He just looked away. That silence said more than any argument could. Days turned into weeks, and the warmth that once filled our home began to fade. He started talking less, eating less, and spending more time on his phone. Sometimes I would hear him arguing softly with Aisha about money. Other times, I would see her frowning at me when she thought I wasn't looking. I felt like a guest in my own home. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Sunday morning. I was folding clothes when Ollie came to me and said he needed some money for an investment. He said he and Aisha's uncle had found a good opportunity, and he needed to act fast. I told him I didn't have much, only my small savings, meant for emergencies. He smiled and said, "Ma, you always said I'm your future. Don't you trust me?" I did trust him. I always had. So I gave him access to my account, thinking I was helping my son build his dream. I didn't ask for papers, proof, or details. I just believed him, because that's what mothers do. That night, he didn't come home. The next day, his phone was off. Aisha's number, too. I called his office, and they said he hadn't come to work. My heart started racing. I went to his in-laws' house, but no one opened the door. By evening, I went to the bank to check my account, and that's when I saw it, every single rupee gone. The teller looked at me with sympathy when she realized what had happened. I didn't say anything. I just walked out and sat on the bench outside the bank, the sun setting behind me, the air heavy and silent. I kept asking myself, why would he do this? I had no answer. That night, I sat in the empty house, staring at the door, hoping he would walk in and say, "Ma, it's all a misunderstanding." But the door never opened. That's how my story began, not with anger, not with shouting, but with silence. A silence that filled every corner of my home. I didn't know it then, but this was only the beginning of my journey, a journey through heartbreak, understanding, and eventually, peace. Because sometimes, the people we love the most are the ones who teach us the hardest lessons about love itself. The days after their wedding were peaceful at first. The house was filled with laughter, new energy, and the soft footsteps of my daughter-in-law, Sarah. She was young, polite, and careful with her words. I remember how she would help me in the kitchen, smile shyly, and say, "Ammi, Aap Beth J, I'll do it." I liked her, truly. I thought maybe God had sent her to bring joy into our quiet home again. For a while, everything seemed perfect. My son, Fahad, looked happy. He'd come home from work, sit at the table, and Sarah would rush to serve him food before I could. I would smile quietly, watching them, thinking, this is how life should be. But slowly, small things began to change. It started with silence. At first, it was just missed conversations. Fahad would come home and go straight to his room. Sarah stopped sitting with me in the evenings. When I'd ask her how her parents were doing, she would nod quickly and say, they're fine, before going back to her phone. I tried not to think much of it. I told myself it's normal, newlyweds need time together. But deep down, something felt different. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I overheard Sarah talking on the phone in her room. Her tone was sharp, frustrated. She treats me like a servant, she said. I can't live like this forever. My hands froze midair. I couldn't believe my ears. Was she talking about me? That night, I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling fan. My heart was heavy, confused. I had never scolded her, never demanded anything. I'd given her my son, my home, my love, and still, she felt like a stranger here. The next morning, I tried to be extra kind. I made her favorite breakfast, paradats with tea, and smiled as I placed the tray on the table. Good morning, Beta, I said softly. She looked up for a second, forced a small smile, and said, good morning. But there was no warmth in her eyes. Then came the money talk. Fahad had started avoiding me when I'd ask about the household expenses. Before marriage, he would always hand me his salary and say, Amy, you take care of it. But now, weeks passed and he hadn't given me anything. One evening, I gathered courage. Fahad Beta, I said gently as he was watching TV, we're short on groceries. Could you give me some money tomorrow? He sighed deeply. Amy, can we talk about this later? I'm tired. Sarah, sitting next to him, frowned slightly and said, actually, Amy, we were thinking we should handle finances differently now. Fahad has a lot of responsibilities. I smiled, hiding the sting. Of course, Beta. Whatever you both feel is right. But inside, my chest ached. It wasn't about the money, it was about the distance growing between us, slowly, quietly, like fog seeping into a house at dawn. Days turned into weeks. Sarah's mother started visiting often. At first, I welcomed her kindly, offered tea, biscuits, and warm conversation. But soon, her tone became sharper. Once she said in front of everyone, you know, Fahad, a man should prioritize his wife now. Your mother has lived her life. Let the young ones make decisions. I felt a lump in my throat but stayed silent. Fahad didn't say a word either. He just nodded. That night, I sat alone in my room, tears silently falling onto my hands. I wasn't angry, just hurt. I kept asking myself, when did I become an outsider in my own home? Things escalated the day my savings came into the picture. I had spent my whole life saving bit by bit. Small amounts tucked away, for emergencies, for the house, for Fahad's future. It wasn't much, but it was everything I had. One morning, Sarah mentioned they wanted to invest in a small business her mother had found. It's a great opportunity, she said brightly. But we need some funds quickly. Fahad was thinking you might have some savings. Her voice was sweet, but I could hear the calculation behind it. I hesitated. It's not a lot, Beta, I said. Just my life savings. I was keeping it for safety. Fahad looked at me, a mix of hope and hesitation in his eyes. Amy, please don't take it the wrong way. It's not that we're asking for everything. Just a loan. I'll return it soon. I trusted him. He was my only son. My heart wouldn't let me say no. A week later, I handed him the envelope, everything I had. Keep it safe, Beta, I said softly. And make sure to invest wisely. He hugged me quickly, but even that felt distant, distracted. Days passed. Then weeks. No update, no mention of the business. One evening, I overheard Sarah talking on the phone again. Yes, Mama, we got it, she whispered. Now Fahad can finally take you to Dubai next month. You deserve a break. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. Dubai? With her mother. That night, when Fahad returned home, I couldn't stay quiet. Fahad, I said carefully, what is this plan to travel? Are you going somewhere? He looked surprised. Oh, Ami, it's just a short trip. Sarah's mother has been wanting to visit her sister. We'll go for a week. With what money, Beta? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. You said you were investing. He looked away. Ami, don't start this again. It's my money now. I'll handle it. Something broke inside me. Your money. I said softly. Beta, that was my life savings. Sarah sighed loudly. Ami, please. Don't make this dramatic. You gave it willingly. Fahad just wants to make you proud. Her words stung like ice. I couldn't speak any more. That night, I cried silently. Not because of the money, but because I saw the distance between us turning into a wall I couldn't climb. A few days later, they packed their bags. I stood by the door as they got ready to leave. Fahad avoided my eyes. Sarah smiled politely and said, we'll be back soon. I tried to bless them. Khuda Hafiz, Beta. Take care. But inside, I knew something was ending. As their car disappeared down the street, the house fell into silence, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like grief. Days turned into weeks again. No calls. No messages. My heart kept waiting, for news, for love, for anything. Then one morning, a letter arrived from the bank. My account was empty. Every last rupee withdrawn. My hands shook as I read it again and again. Empty. Nothing left. I went to the branch, hoping it was a mistake. But the manager confirmed it. It was withdrawn by your son, ma'am. Full amount. I felt the world spin. My legs went weak. I remember gripping the counter for support. That night, I sat in the dark, staring at the empty table where Fahad used to sit. I kept whispering his name like a prayer. Fahad, why? I had raised him with love, not luxury. I had given him my everything, my health, my years, my heart. And he took what little I had left without a second thought. But even in that pain, part of me hoped, maybe he would come back, maybe he would apologize. Maybe my son would remember the mother who once held him when he was sick, who stayed awake all night just to make sure he slept peacefully. Days passed. Then a week. Then a month. No word. No return. Neighbors started asking questions. I smiled and made excuses, they're busy, they'll call soon. But every night, I cried myself to sleep, clutching the only photo I had of us, from the day of his wedding. That's when something inside me began to change. The pain that had once made me weak now turned into strength, quiet, steady, and determined. If he could forget me so easily, I would learn to live without him. Days passed into months. The silence in the house became part of me, like a shadow that followed wherever I went. I stopped waiting by the phone. I stopped checking messages. At first, I used to count the days. Then, I just counted the seasons. Winter came again. Cold winds filled the small cracks in my windows. I wrapped myself in an old shawl, the same one Fahad had bought for me years ago, and sat on the veranda, staring at the gate. Sometimes, I'd imagine him walking in, smiling sheepishly, saying, Ami, I made a mistake. But imagination can be cruel. It gives you a taste of what you long for and then takes it away. I started selling small things around the house to manage expenses, some jewelry, old crockery, even the embroidered shawls I had kept for special occasions. I didn't tell anyone the truth. I didn't want sympathy. But deep inside, a storm was growing, quiet, cold, and strong. One afternoon, I was at the market when I heard a familiar voice behind me. It was one of Fahad's old friends, Hamza. He looked surprised to see me. "Auntie. How are you? It's been so long. How's Fahad?" I saw pictures, they looked like they were having fun in Dubai. I froze. "Dubai?" I asked softly. He nodded. "Yeah, he posted on Facebook. Looked like a nice trip." I smiled weakly. Yes, they're fine." But inside, my heart shattered again. I didn't even know my son was posting pictures while I sat here, counting coins to buy rice. That night, I finally opened my old phone, the one I had stopped using. I searched for his Facebook account. There it was, smiling photos, bright beaches, expensive restaurants, Sarah in designer clothes. And there, in one post, was her mother too, laughing beside them. The caption read, "Family time is the best time." Family. The word burned in my chest. I scrolled through the comments. Friends wrote things like, "You're so lucky, Fahad. Mashallah, such a beautiful family." No one knew the woman who had raised him was living alone, forgotten. I couldn't cry anymore. My tears had run out months ago. The next morning, I went to the mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back, tired eyes, hollow cheeks, a face that once smiled too much now lined with silence. That's when something shifted inside me. For months, I had begged God for my son to return. But now, I stopped asking. Instead, I whispered, "Show me the truth. Show me what I must do." A few days later, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Assalamu alaikum, is this Mrs. Nazreen?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes," I replied carefully. "This is from the bank. We wanted to confirm, do you authorize another withdrawal from your joint account with Mr. Fahad?" My heart skipped. "Joint account?" I asked in shock. "I never created a joint account." The woman hesitated. "It was opened last year, ma'am. Your son added your name as secondary authorization. There's a pending request for transfer." My hands trembled. "No," I said firmly. "Do not approve it." I did not sign anything. After ending the call, I sat still for a long time. So this was it. They were trying to take more, maybe even the small pension that came every month. That day, I took my old documents and went straight to the bank. The manager recognized me from before. "Madam, we're sorry for what happened earlier," he said softly. "Your son used your identity card to access the account. It's a common issue in joint accounts. Can I separate it?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes, but you'll need to file a complaint." I signed every paper with shaking hands. It wasn't just about money now. It was about standing up for myself, something I hadn't done in years. As I walked out, I felt something strange, power. Not anger, not revenge yet, but strength. Quiet and steady. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in months. Weeks later, I got a message from an unknown number. It was Fahad. "Ami, how are you? It's been a while." My eyes blurred. I wanted to type everything I'd felt, the pain, the betrayal, the endless nights, but I only wrote, "I'm fine, Beta. How are you?" He replied after an hour. "We're good. Actually, I wanted to ask, can you send me your pension card number? We're sorting some financial issues." I stared at the message for a long time. My fingers hovered over the screen. Then I put the phone down. He wasn't asking about me. He was asking for money, again. My heart broke, but my mind stayed calm. Instead of replying, I went to the local office the next morning and transferred my pension to a new account, under my name only. I made sure every old link was erased. For the first time, I felt like I was reclaiming pieces of myself, one signature at a time. That evening, I finally replied. "Beta, I don't have those details anymore. I've closed that account. Hope everything works out for you. He didn't reply. Days turned into weeks again, until one day, I received a message from one of our neighbors. Did you hear? Fahad and Sarah are back in town. My heart jumped. After all this time. That night, I stayed awake, listening to every sound outside the house. Around midnight, I heard a car stop near the gate. Footsteps followed. Then, a knock on the door. I opened it slowly, and there they were. Fahad looked different, tired, unshaven, eyes filled with something that almost looked like regret. Sarah stood beside him, her usual confidence replaced by quiet nervousness. Amy, he said softly. Can we come in? I nodded and stepped aside. The same home that once felt empty now felt heavy with unsaid words. They sat at the table, the same table we used to eat dinner at every night. For a few moments, no one spoke. Only the sound of the ceiling fan filled the room. Finally, Fahad said, Amy, I know you're angry. I stayed quiet. He looked down. Things didn't go the way we planned. The business failed. Sarah's mother used most of the money. We tried to recover it, but everything collapsed. Sarah lowered her head, silent. I looked at them, the son I had raised, the daughter-in-law I had once welcomed with love. They looked smaller now, like children who had lost their way. For a long time, I said nothing. Then I spoke slowly, choosing every word with care. Fahad, do you know what hurt me the most? He didn't look up. That I took your money. No, I whispered. That you took my trust. He swallowed hard, his eyes glistening. Amy, I was stupid. I thought I was helping everyone. I thought I could manage it all. I thought you'd forgive me like always. I smiled sadly. I did forgive you. Even before you came back. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Sarah started crying quietly. I'm so sorry, Amy. I should have stopped him. I just wanted us to have a good life. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity. Good life? I said softly. A good life doesn't start by breaking the one who gave you everything. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument could be. After a while, Fahad said, Amy, we have nowhere else to go. Can we stay here for a few days? I hesitated. The mother in me wanted to say yes immediately. But the woman who had cried alone for months, she stayed quiet. Finally, I said, you can stay. But only for a few days. Then you must find your own way. He nodded slowly. Thank you. That night, I lay awake again, but not with sadness. This time, it was something else. Something colder. Something that whispered, they need to feel what I felt. The next morning, I cooked breakfast like old times, paradats, tea, and eggs. Fahad smiled slightly when he saw it. Amy, this smells so good. Just like before. I nodded but said nothing. After breakfast, I handed him a small envelope. He looked confused. What's this? Your documents, I said. The bank account you opened in my name. The complaint copies. I kept them. He froze. Amy, you knew. Yes, I said calmly. I knew everything. I stayed silent because I wanted to see when you'd come back. Whether it was for me, or for money. His face turned pale. Amy, please. I raised my hand. No, Beta. Don't explain. Just understand. The world gives you chances, but a mother, she gives you her heart. You tore it apart. Now you must learn to live without it. He looked at me, tears filling his eyes. Amy, please don't say that. I can't. But I turned away. It wasn't revenge in the cruel sense. It was justice, quiet, personal, and necessary. For years, I had lived for him. Now, I would live for myself. That night, as I sat near the window, I saw them packing their bags. Sarah's face was red from crying. Fahad looked lost, broken. They stood at the door. Amy, he said softly. I'll never forget what I did. I'm sorry. I nodded. I know, Beta. I forgive you. But sometimes, we must live with the emptiness we create. He lowered his head, then walked out quietly. As the door closed behind them, I felt the air in the house change. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was calm, peaceful. I whispered to myself, sometimes, silence is not pain. It's freedom. When the door closed behind them, it felt like the last chapter of a long, painful book. I stood there for a while, my hand resting on the doorknob, listening to the silence that filled the room. It wasn't the same silence as before. It didn't ache anymore. It felt lighter, cleaner, like fresh air after a storm. I walked slowly to the chair near the window, sat down, and stared at the empty street outside. For months, I had imagined that moment, the day they would leave, the day I would be alone again. But this time, it didn't hurt. It felt necessary. That night, I made myself a simple dinner, rice and lentils. No extra plates, no noise, no waiting. I ate slowly, each bite reminding me that I was still here. That life, somehow, had continued even when my heart had stopped believing it could. When I went to bed, I didn't cry. I whispered a prayer instead. Thank you, God, for showing me the truth, and for giving me the strength to live through it. Days turned into weeks. The rhythm of life returned, quietly. I woke early, cleaned the house, watered the plants, and sometimes went to the small park nearby. The neighbors greeted me politely, some even invited me for tea, but I preferred peace. I started spending my mornings at the community library. I used to teach there years ago, before everything fell apart. One of the young volunteers recognized me. Auntie, you used to help kids with reading, right? We could use your help again. Something inside me warmed. I'd love to, I said. It started small, just 1 or 2 children coming in after school. I'd help them read, tell them stories, sometimes even give them small snacks. Slowly, word spread. Within a few weeks, more children joined. Their laughter filled the room, and for the first time in years, my heart felt alive again. Every evening, I'd walk home smiling. My hands were busy again, but more importantly, so was my heart. One day, a little girl named Noor looked up at me during a story session and said, Auntie, you smile like my grandmother. I paused, touched. And where is your grandmother, Noor? She lives far away, she said. We don't visit her much. My mama says she's old and stubborn. Her words struck something deep inside me. I smiled gently and said, maybe she misses you more than you think. That night, as I walked home under the soft glow of the streetlights, I thought about my son again. Not with anger, not with pain, but with something softer, almost like understanding. Maybe he wasn't cruel. Maybe he was just lost. Months passed. Life became peaceful, not perfect but peaceful. My health improved, my appetite returned, and my laughter, quiet, hesitant, found its way back. One afternoon, I received a letter. It was addressed in handwriting I recognized immediately. My hands trembled as I opened it. Amy. I don't know if you will ever read this, but I needed to write it. You were right. I took your trust, not just your money. I thought I was helping everyone, but I ended up losing the only person who ever truly helped me. Sarah and we're separated now. Her mother used everything we had. I tried to fix things but I couldn't. Sometimes I think about coming back, but I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just hope you're okay, and that you've found peace. Your son. Fahad. I read the letter again and again. Each line felt like a wound and a bomb at the same time. He was hurting too, and in a strange way, that made me feel closer to him. I folded the letter and placed it inside my drawer. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to respond right away. Maybe silence could speak what words couldn't. As time went on, I began to find small joys in little things, watering flowers, helping children learn, listening to the radio at night. Every Friday, I cooked something special and shared it with a widow who lived down the street. We'd sit together, talk about old times, laugh about silly things. One day she said, "You're lucky, you know. You have a son." I smiled faintly. "Yes," I said softly. "Somewhere in the world I do." That night, I looked at the old photo of Fahad on my bedside table, the one taken when he was 6 years old, wearing a school uniform, smiling with his missing front tooth. I whispered, "I still love you, Beta. Even when you're not here." A year later, something unexpected happened. It was a Sunday morning when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, I froze. Fahad stood there. He looked thinner, older, worn down by life. There was no arrogance in his posture anymore. He held a small bag in one hand, and in the other, a small bouquet of white lilies. "Ammi," he whispered. For a moment I couldn't move. My throat felt tight, my eyes blurred. He took a step forward. "I know I don't deserve to be here. But I couldn't stay away anymore." I didn't speak. I simply stepped aside and let him in. He looked around the room, the same furniture, the same clock ticking softly on the wall. "Everything's the same," he said quietly. "You didn't change a thing." I finally found my voice. "Some things don't need to change. They just wait." He nodded, his eyes glistening. "Ammi, I'm sorry for everything. For the money, for the words, for the silence. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I could build a better life. But I destroyed the one that mattered most." Tears welled in my eyes, but I stayed calm. "Fahad, pain changes people. It changed you. It changed me too." He looked down, ashamed. "I know. I can't undo what I did, but if you'll let me, I want to start over. Even if it's just as your son who visits sometimes." I smiled through the tears. "You were always my son. That never changed. I just stopped waiting for you to remember it." He broke down then, quietly, like a child who had carried too much for too long. I reached out and placed my hand on his head. "It's okay, Beta. Sometimes, life has to break us before it teaches us how to stand again." We sat there for a long time, not speaking, just breathing the same air, mother and son, broken and mending at the same time. In the days that followed, he started visiting more often. Sometimes he brought groceries, sometimes just sat silently while I cooked. The distance between us didn't disappear overnight, but little by little, we found our way back to each other. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset, he said, "Ammi, do you ever wish things had been different?" I looked at him for a long moment before answering. "No, Beta. Because if they hadn't happened this way, you might never have understood what truly matters." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I was blind. But you still waited for me." I smiled softly. "That's what mothers do. We wait, not because we're weak, but because love doesn't have an expiry date." Months later, Fahad found a small job nearby. It wasn't much, but it was honest work. He started saving again, not for luxury, but for stability. One day, he came home with a small envelope. "Ammi, I want you to have this." I opened it, a few currency notes and a handwritten card that said, "For all that I took, I want to give back." I looked at him, tears in my eyes. "Beta, you don't owe me anything." He shook his head. "No, Ammi. I owe you everything. But this time, I want to earn it." I smiled. "Then earn it by living right. That will be my reward." Time moved quietly after that. We never spoke much about the past. Some wounds don't need to be reopened, they just need to be understood. One evening, as I was closing the curtains, Fahad asked, "Do you forgive me completely, Ami?" I paused, then turned toward him. Forgiveness isn't one thing, Beta. It's 1,000 small choices we make every day. And yes, I choose to forgive you, again and again. He smiled faintly. Then maybe one day, I'll learn to forgive myself too. That night, after he left, I sat by the window again, the same place where I had once cried, once waited, once prayed. But now, it wasn't pain that filled the room. It was peace. I whispered to the quiet night, maybe this was my lesson, that love is not about holding on, it's about letting go until it finds its way back. Outside, the wind moved softly through the trees. Somewhere, a mother was probably waiting for her child to return. Somewhere, a son was probably realizing how much his mother had loved him all along. And here I was, no longer broken, just whole in a quieter way. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't the same kind of quiet as before. This time, it felt peaceful, like everything inside had found its rightful place. The air didn't feel heavy anymore, and even the walls, once filled with sadness, now carried warmth. Every sound, the ticking clock, the soft hum of the fan, the gentle rustle of leaves outside, felt like a song of calm after years of chaos. I sat near the window, just like I had done so many nights in the past, but now my heart wasn't waiting for anyone to knock or call. It was simply content to be still. Sometimes peace doesn't come after everything is fixed. It comes when you stop trying to fix what broke you. Life had slowed down in the best possible way. Every morning, I woke up with purpose, not the kind that depends on someone else's presence, but the quiet kind that grows from within. I'd make breakfast, water the garden, feed the stray cat that had started visiting me. The little things that used to feel meaningless suddenly mattered again. Sometimes, when I'd see families passing by, a mother holding her son's hand, a father laughing with his children, I felt a small ache but not bitterness. Just a gentle reminder of what once was. I didn't turn away from it anymore. I simply smiled, grateful that I had lived enough to feel both sides of love, the giving and the losing. Fahad visited often now. Not every day but enough. He'd come in the evenings, bringing little things, fresh bread from the bakery, a small box of sweets, sometimes flowers he couldn't afford but bought anyway. Every time, I told him he didn't need to, but I could see that he wasn't trying to impress me. He was trying to heal me, and maybe himself too. One evening, he came home carrying an old photo album. "I found this while cleaning the cupboard," he said quietly, placing it on the table. The cover was worn, its corners bent, but I recognized it instantly, our old family album. He opened it, turning the pages slowly. There we were, me, my late husband, little Fahad with his mischievous grin. His first day of school. His birthday where the cake had fallen, but he laughed anyway. His teenage years, his graduation, his wedding day. Each picture was a frozen piece of a life that had once felt so complete. We sat there in silence, flipping through memories that had once made us smile, and now made us quiet. "Ami," he said softly, "do you ever wish you could go back?" I looked at him and smiled gently. "No, Beta. Because even if I could go back, we'd still have to learn what we've learned now. Some lessons can't be avoided, they're part of who we're meant to become." He looked down, his fingers tracing the edge of a photo. "I wish I could have learned without hurting you." I placed my hand over his. "We all hurt the people who love us most, Fahad. The only difference is whether we come back to make it right." His eyes filled with tears, and he nodded slowly. "I came back too late." I shook my head. "No, you came back when you were ready to see. That's never too late." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years, peace in his eyes. It was small, but it was there. That night, after he left, I sat alone with the album for a while. The pictures blurred through my tears, but this time, they were tears of acceptance. I realized that forgiveness isn't a moment, it's a lifetime of small choices, to remember without hating, to look back without wishing things had been different, and to love without expecting anything in return. One morning, I woke up to the sound of laughter outside my window. The children from the neighborhood were playing again. Their laughter used to feel like a cruel reminder of what I'd lost, but now, it was the sweetest music. I got dressed and went to the library early that day. The children ran to me as soon as I entered. "Auntie! Auntie! We finished the book," one of them shouted. I laughed. "Already? Then today, I'll tell you a story instead." They all gathered around, eyes wide, waiting. I told them a story, not about princes or magic, but about a mother and her son. About mistakes and forgiveness. About finding your way home when the road feels too long. When I finished, one of the boys whispered, "Auntie, did that really happen?" I smiled softly. "Maybe. Or maybe it happens every day, somewhere in the world." The truth was, it did happen, to me, to countless others, to every mother who's ever loved too much and every child who's ever taken that love for granted. Weeks passed peacefully. One evening, Fahad came with exciting news. "Ami," he said, "I got a promotion. It's not a big one, but it's something." I smiled, proud in a way only a mother can be. "You earned it, Beta. I'm proud of you." He grinned like a child again. "I want to do something for you now. You've done enough for me all my life." I shook my head. "You already did something. You came back." But he insisted. "No, Ami. This time, it's my turn." A few weeks later, he took me to a small cafe by the sea. It wasn't fancy, but the view was beautiful. The sound of the waves, the smell of coffee, the golden sunset, everything felt like a quiet reward for surviving. We sat together, sipping tea. Fahad watched the horizon and said, "You know, Ami, for the longest time I thought money could fix everything, that comfort mattered more than people. But when everything was gone, I realized peace can't be bought. And I only found peace when I came back to you." I smiled gently. "We all chase something, Fahad. But life has a way of bringing us back to what really matters." He nodded. "I'm just sorry it took me losing everything to understand." I placed my hand on his. "Sometimes, Beta, losing everything is the only way we learn what everything really is." That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about all the years that had passed, the pain, the betrayal, the loneliness, the waiting, the forgiveness. And I realized something simple but powerful. We spend so much of our lives waiting for apologies, waiting for people to change, waiting for justice. But healing begins the day we stop waiting and start living for ourselves. For a long time, I thought my story ended when Fahad left. But now, I knew it was just beginning, the part where I found myself again, not as a mother defined by her child's love, but as a woman defined by her strength. Every scar I carried had turned into a story, a reminder that I had lived, that I had loved deeply, and that I had survived what was meant to break me. Months later, I was invited to a small community event at the library. They wanted to honor me for helping the children. When they called my name, I walked to the front, not with pride but with quiet gratitude. As I looked at the smiling faces, the children, the parents, my neighbors, I realized I had built something new. Not the family I lost, but a family I found. After the event, Fahad came to me with tears in his eyes. "Ami, I don't deserve you." I smiled and said, "You don't have to deserve love, Beta. You just have to understand it." He hugged me tightly, and for the first time, I felt that hug not as an apology, but as a promise. Time kept moving, as it always does. The seasons changed, the trees bloomed, and life carried on. I grew older, slower, softer, but never empty again. Every once in a while, I'd sit by the window at sunset, watching the sky turn gold and pink, and think about all that had happened. I didn't see tragedy anymore. I saw a journey, a long road that taught me patience, strength, and forgiveness. And I realized something I wish every mother and child could know: love doesn't mean you never get hurt. It means you choose to keep your heart open, even when you do. If someone had told me years ago that I'd find peace after losing everything, I would have laughed. But peace isn't something you find. It's something you create, one small act of courage at a time. I created mine the day I chose forgiveness over revenge. The day I stopped chasing what left and started nurturing what stayed. Because in the end, revenge fades, anger burns out, but love, real, quiet, unconditional love remains. It doesn't erase the past, but it transforms it into wisdom. Now, when people see me at the library, they see a smiling old woman surrounded by children. But inside, I know I'm something more. I'm a survivor of my own heartbreak, a teacher of my own lessons. Sometimes the children ask me, "Auntie, what's the most important thing in the world?" I always smile and say, "Peace in your heart, Beta." Because without it, even love feels heavy. And maybe that's the lesson my life was always meant to teach, not just to my son, but to me too. That love isn't ownership. It's freedom. And forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the highest form of strength. Years later, when Fahad had his own little son, he brought him to meet me. The child ran around the living room, laughing, full of life. I looked at him and smiled. "Your father was just like you," I said, watching the little boy play. Fahad looked at me with a quiet smile. "I want him to grow up knowing what I learned too late, that love isn't something you take, it's something you protect." I nodded. "Then teach him that every day, not with words but with how you live." He promised he would. And as I watched them together, father and son, I felt a deep calm inside. Maybe that was my real revenge, after all, not anger, not distance, but healing. I had turned pain into peace, and that peace had found its way into the next generation. That night, as I closed my eyes, I whispered a prayer, not for myself, but for every mother who has ever been forgotten, every child who has ever been lost, every family that has ever broken apart. May they all find their way back, not just to each other but to themselves. The clock ticked softly in the dark. The world outside was quiet. And for the first time in a long, long time, I knew the story wasn't about what was taken from me. It was about what I found when everything was gone. Peace. And that, I realized, was the richest thing I ever owned.